What's up, guys? We're back with another NECA Toon Turtles review, taking a look at another Haulathon set, and today we've got the cartoon Tonka and Razar. So of course these guys are most commonly associated with Secret of the Ooze, but they do appear in the cartoon, so of course they were going to hit this line. Now of course this is a standard set, so 2-pack in our normal yellow and green packaging. So you've got the figures there in the window, you've got cartoon artwork on the front, product shots on both spines, and then the back of the box gives us some cross-sell, larger shots of these two, and then our sort of normal write-up for Turtles. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our cartoon Tonka and Razar. Two figures that I'm not entirely sure I can say I've been waiting for in this line, but I'm no less happy to get them. You know, they appear in Secret of the Ooze, they had vintage figures, they made an appearance in the cartoon, so of course, they can be made into this line. I'm still surprised that we made it this far, but I'm happy to see these guys. And there's a lot of new stuff on these figures. These guys were sculpted by Paul Harding, so he's been doing a lot of new Turtle stuff, which is a pretty good indicator for me that these are probably going to be pretty solid. So I'm really excited to see what these guys have going on. So let's take a look, see what they can do, see how they move around, all that good stuff. I'm going to start with Tonka, and then we will get to Razar next. So as far as moving this guy around, he's still pretty normal as far as a turtle goes. He is on a new body. You know, he's a little bit beefier, but it's still pretty normal. Our head can look up about that far. We go down. He does have an articulating jaw. So it goes, I mean, really, really wide. I do like that. You've got tilt side to side, rotation. Arms go out at the shoulder. They only go this far, though, really, because of that pad that's up there. You can kind of get it to go up over the lip of the shoulder, but I'm trying not to stress it too much. I think there is a little bit of a hump in there too. They go up. They're gonna hit the shell when they go all the way back. And they go backwards only about that far. But you got to kick them out to the side if you want to go all the way. You've got your bicep swivel. We've got double jointed elbows. Now they do have pads, so that is gonna get in the way. Just like on the Turtles, you know, it always kind of stops them from moving all the way. You've got hinges at the wrist. You've got rotation. It's very, very normal, especially for a turtle. As far as the actual torso goes, now you know what's going to happen here. There is articulation under there, but there is a shell here. There's a shell back here too. So he's got a little tilt side to side. Like, honestly, he's got a good bit of shimmy, but he doesn't really want to twist. A little bit. You can hear it, I'm sure, but not a whole lot. Some. There's a little bit there. We've got, I'm not even going to say newer style. They are the current style hips. So ball socket hips. They go out. They kick forward. Kick backward. You do have your twist up there too. And we've got our double jointed knees. So they go back about, that's pretty good, especially because of the pad there. It always gets in the way. And then we've got really nice rocker, nothing in the way there. And then you got hinges down at those ankles. So, you know, pretty normal. Nothing too crazy as far as a turtle goes. It's basically what you would expect. But I don't have any issues with anything stuck or none of that nonsense. Everything was fine right out of the box. So nothing to really play with there. And then, of course, you know, we do have the hips that are much more of a quality of life improvement, QC improvement. And then we've got Razar here, which is kind of more of the same, really. There's not too much different between the two. So head goes up. We've also got an articulating jaw, not as much as Tonka, but still pretty good. Down slightly, like that's probably neutral, so we can go down a little bit. You've got your tilt, really nice tilt here, and then of course rotation. Arms go out at the shoulders, and he is a little bit more limited because he's got these shoulder pads. These are articulated, they do move on the shoulder itself, but they are going to get in the way. So about that far. They rotate. You've got your bicep swivel. You've got double jointed elbows. Again, more of the pad, so his elbows are a little bit more limited. You've got your hinge and rotation at the wrist. And then we've got our diaphragm, which is a diaphragm cut. So there's an actual cut there, similar to what Tonka has. I mean, he actually has one in there. It's just not as easy to use. So you can go backwards about that far. And then he goes forward, but he's got the, you know, the cage on his chest there, so it's going to hit. If you want to try and like sort of pop that over a little bit, you can get him to crunch down more by getting it to go like over his undies right there. You've got some tilt here as well, and then this is your rotation point. I can't tell that there's anything at the waist because I'm honestly not sure if he even could, because he's pretty tight down there. He's pretty thin, So this thing would, if it twists, you know, it wouldn't go anywhere. It does not seem to move, and you get plenty of rotation out of that torso anyway, so I'm not sure it really matters. Legs out pretty far. I mean, almost a splits, not exactly, but almost. Kick forward about that far. You do get to kick backwards. There is your squeaky thigh swivel up there. Double jointed knees. Again, more of the pads getting in the way. And then you've got rocker and you've got hinges down at those ankles. So pretty normal. You know, really, the only area that both of these guys seem to be a little bit locked down on is the shoulders, because they both have business going on up there. And then, of course, you know, Tokka's got a shell. He's a turtle, so it does hinder him in that way. But overall, they move probably exactly how you expect them to move if you have any familiarity with this line. Now, aesthetically, I think, for the most part anyway, these guys hit all the marks. I'd say Razar is essentially like spot on. Like, I really don't have many issues with him. I think he looks pretty fantastic. They are again, you know, comprised of a lot of new stuff, and he is sized really well. Both of them are sized really well. So I think there's a lot of good stuff here. This time around, let's start with Razar, and then we'll talk about Tokka, because I do have some, I don't know, concerns, nitpicky nonsense probably is more likely what it is. But for Razar, he looks pretty great. The whole body is textured. So, of course, you know, he's supposed to be furry. So he's fully textured. Every bit of him is covered in a hair-like sculpt. You've got a lot of, like, the telltale Razar things on him. So you've got, you know, like the grate on his chest. And then you've got, you know, just junk really all over him that ends up being armor. But this thing very much looks like the vintage figure. And we'll do comparisons to the movie figure and the vintage figure here shortly, as well as sizing. But I just think it's really weird, you know, in many instances where we see that a lot of the inspiration for the cartoon design kind of came more from how the toy came out than actually the movie, which, you know, for me is fine because I love that toy too. So he does look pretty good. Paint is really nicely done. I don't have any issue with slop or anything like that. You know, of course, being a TOON figure, he gets, you know, whacked down the middle, so he's darker on the back, lighter on the front. And I think it works really well here. It very much makes him look like he is cast in shadow, specifically because you've got those two tones of brown. But then you've got all this other stuff on him. So he's got like the ripped blue shirt, you've got the yellow grate, you've got these super green underwear, which I think look fantastic. And they draw your eye. They draw your eye right to his crotch, I suppose. But they, of course, break the figure up too, and it just makes him pop a little bit more. I think overwhelmingly, he looks like he jumped right out of the cartoon, though. I'm really happy with him. A lot of little details that just work really well, like the manacles on his wrist being a separate piece that really easily and very well, I should say, hide the joints. Not that it's really an eyesore to have a hinge on a wrist, but you can't see it here, and it doesn't really get in the way either. So stuff like that really, really works for me. The head sculpt on him, pretty nice. I mean, these guys look really dorky and really goofy in many ways, and I think that comes through in a good way. I think that comes through really well with his head sculpt. You know, he looks a little menacing, but he also looks a little ridiculous too. And these guys are really different in the cartoon than they are in the movie as well. So, you know, if you're familiar with the source material on this one, you know that these guys aren't the same kind of, you know, infantile characters that we saw in the movie. They're a little bit different. I do, again, really like the articulating jaw. Whenever we get that on these figures, I always like it because it just adds a little bit of depth and more expressive nature to them without having to have extra heads to pop in and pop out. So I'm happy with that. Paint, again, up here looks really nice. Sculpting is really well done. Tons of that fur detail all over him. And it's just a cool looking figure. You know, if you like Razar as the cartoon character, this is a really good way to get him in figure form because, I mean, he looks pretty perfect. I was really hoping that Tokka would be the one that I preferred because I like Tokka more between the two. You know, you got to play favorites sometimes, right? But I think Razar is my favorite as far as just, you know, overall figure. And that said, here is Tokka. Here's our snapping turtle. And there's a lot more going on with this guy in many ways than there is with Razar. Not in a negative or, you know, positive way one way or the other. It's just he's a different kind of character. So let's get a little closer on him and we will take a look, because I do think there's kind of some weirdness going on with him in terms of his colors. He looks a little too bright to me. He looks like he leans a little more yellow than green. And in the show, he's pretty green. Like, he's not bright green. He's certainly not Style Guide turtle colors. He's like a muddy, sort of dingy green. And this is really bright. This is like almost highlighter yellow. So I'm not so sure about the color on him. It's not really bothering me, but it's also something that sticks out because I just don't think it's correct. I think it's a little bit off. But the rest of the figure, I mean, he looks fantastic. And, again, this is going to be, as best I know, this is going to be the base for our upcoming Archie Slash. And this is a beefy, chunky figure. He's not huge. Like, obviously, I had to zoom in and pan down on him to get him in frame. He's a lot smaller than Razar in terms of height, but he's really, really thick and chunky. So there's a lot of mass to this guy. I really, really can't stress enough, though, the focal point on this figure is going to be the shell. Because this thing is wild. It's crazy. Tons and tons of detail packed in here. You've got his sort of really goofy belt. This is, very much a toy kind of thing that came through into the cartoon. And there's so much detail here. All of these skulls and the little ninja stars, the foot emblem, and then, of course, all this paint. So white, black, red, gray, sort of this gray-blue color here. And then you've got it that wraps around to the shell with all of the spikes. And you can exactly see, how something like this is going to translate into a slightly chunkier Slash, too. So this is getting me pretty hyped for that figure on its own. But this guy looks pretty great otherwise. I think the only thing that's really bothering me in any way is the color. I think he's a little bit too bright. But overall, I mean, he looks pretty fantastic. He's really stocky and stodgy and just a little bit, like shrunken down bruiser kind of character. The head sculpt, though, is pretty tremendous. There's a ton of expressiveness with the face. It's very similar, but in a different way to the movie Tokka. He's really expressive because he's got those eyebrows. This guy becomes a lot more expressive simply because he has an opening mouth. Just like with Razar, there's a lot more potential just like that. You've got all those gnarly teeth in there, super, super red tongue, and then you've got this really furrowed, angry brow. In the episode, he's all about food a lot, so this is very much, he is hungry, he's going to go eat. And you've got the food for that in this particular set when it comes to some of the accessories that we're going to talk about. So I do think he looks pretty solid. I do think, however, that there is some weirdness going on with his colors. But when you pair these guys together, I mean, it's undeniably cool to have these two on your shelf in cartoon form all in one go. That's really fun. Now, for comparison's sake, let's do Razar's and Tokka's, so you can get an idea of what we've got here and what I've been talking about when it comes to the Playmates infusion into the cartoon designs. So you've got your Tokka over on the right, our Razar on the left, and you can see that they're all very much the same thing. Like, it's quite clear. They're all the same character, they're just different interpretations of it. But Playmates to TOON is where things really get a little bit more, tight, because a lot of this is very much the same. You've got things like the spikes on Tokka's arms, on his shoulders. They're just spikes on his shoulders in the movie, but they're actual pads in the toy, and those are actual pads in the cartoon. Things like the shell is very, very different in the figure versus the movie, and it's the same in the cartoon. Things like that, the knee pads, the belt, although I don't know why mine doesn't have the belt on him right now, but you'll have to take my word for it. It's the same. It's just a solid color. And then you've got things like Razar, where he's a little bit more in line, but you've got different stuff. So, you've got like the bracers on the knee pads and the armor pads are all very similar to the movie, but they're just a little bit different, and they're a little bit more dumbed down. You've got things like the shoulder pads, which again are very similar, but still a little bit more dumbed down. The big things that are similar, though, between cartoon and toy was the chest guard, the undies, and the ripped shirt. It's all taken right from the toy. So that's really, really interesting. They all sort of fold into each other eventually once you sort of get them all next to each other. I will say, though, these two are where things really, really take a turn, because I still don't think Tokka should be this bright. I think he probably falls somewhere in between these two. Slightly more green, slightly less yellow. But there's an idea of what they look like, and just to give you a better idea of where a lot of this design came from when they aren't necessarily just cartoon interpretations of these guys. There's a lot of, sort of different design elements that went from here to here to here. And then for a few other comparisons, just for the sake of size, we got a pretty good idea with Tonka and Razar from the movie line, but here they are with another cartoon figure. Of course, a turtle makes the most sense, so Leo, you can see he's about as tall as Tonka, but he's shorter than Razar, and he's not nearly as chunky as Tonka, so you get a good idea of what he's going to look like. Again, these guys aren't huge. They're big, they're just not huge, and I think that comes through pretty well here. And then let's do a Marvel Legend. Here they are with the High Evolutionary. He's pretty standard. He's pretty similar in size to a turtle, so get an idea of what he looks like with them for a more 1/12 kind of figure, because of course these guys are not necessarily 1/12. And then let's do another, just one quick more, 1 7-inch Ultimates figure from Super 7. So here they are with a Conan the Barbarian, which is very much a standard Ultimates kind of figure when it comes to humans. So you can see Razar sizes up pretty well next to this kind of figure, and then of course, Tonka, again, super thick, super chunky, but just a bit smaller height-wise. Now, as far as accessories goes, these guys kind of have a weird one because they don't really have anything, so they've given us a bunch of stuff from this episode, which is really weird when you think about the fact that the Super Bebop Mighty Rocksteady set had specific things from that episode that could have been in the box but weren't. Instead, they went with stuff that wasn't from that episode, so I don't know, it's kind of weird. I'm curious how they make those decisions. So they have stuff from the episode, but these guys don't really have anything in the episode. They just do stuff. So to start with, they get some hands. They've got gripping hands on them in the box, and then they get a set of style pose, relax kind of hands, clawing hands almost. And they can be, menacing, aggressive. No fists, though. That's kind of surprising. I would have preferred to have had fists. Now, one thing they do in this episode is they ransack and just annihilate a restaurant. So they get the food from that. So you get like these bones with like a turkey leg or like a roast on it or something like that. You get this big platter spread with like a big turkey on it, like some salami, cheese and stuff like that. So this is pretty cool. Like I like the idea behind it, especially because this stuff is very much part of the episode, but I don't have the foggiest idea what I'm ever going to do with this stuff. And then they get this very cartoony fish with like the telltale X's in the eyes. I do like that. It's funny. It's goofy. And then we get like the gadget from this episode. So of course, again, the Dirk Savage episode, he's going around collecting mutants or catching mutants. And then there's that he's a slug, AJ Howard, and he has this little control device thing. And that's what this is. So you've got, it's a very TOON aesthetic. You've got flat colors with a little screen. It's a very like 90s kind of computer type device. But again, nothing that these guys really you're not going to pose them with this stuff. So I'm really curious about the decision-making process around this one. Not that I don't like these, but at the same time, I don't see myself really ever using any of this stuff. I see it going in a bag, probably never to return, unless I decide to have like a Thanksgiving setup for my turtles, which honestly, I suppose that would work pretty well. So it's cool stuff, but it's going to be very specific in terms of how you're probably going to use it. So yeah, overall, pretty solid set. Like, again, I'm really happy to have these guys in this form. I don't think they're perfect by any means. I really think they kind of flounder a bit when it comes to the accessories, because while these guys don't have anything specifically that they should come with, they come with a bunch of stuff that I personally just don't think I'm ever going to need. Like, I'd have rather gotten something that maybe goes with other figures, or just to flesh out a different set in some ways, pack in the stuff that should have been in the Mighty Bebop and Super Rocksteady stuff. Otherwise, I do think these are pretty cool. They look fantastic. I do still think that Tonka tends to lend a little bit more towards yellow than green, which definitely seems like a problem, but otherwise, they are really cool. I love the new parts. I love how beefy Tonka is. Like, he's a really fat, stodgy turtle, and I'm really excited to see how this translates into an Archie Slash for sure. And then Razar is just pretty great all around when it comes to aesthetics. I think they absolutely nailed him from top to bottom. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys Cartoon Tonka and Razar. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.